How's it going, Rogues Gallery, and welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. Today, I am super stoked to have the professor from Tolarian Community College here on the channel to talk about Flesh and Blood. Thank you so much for coming on. It is a real honor.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's just talk about Flesh and Blood. I have some questions prepared, and we can just, jump right into it. What do you say?
I say that's a great idea. Let's do it.
All right, so the first one I want to ask you is, how did you find out about Flesh and Blood, and what really caused you to take an interest in it and to start talking about it?
Well, obviously my channel is primarily Magic the Gathering, but I get a lot of feedback from my audience about other TCGs and just gaming, sometimes tabletop gaming or board games, things like that, that they're interested in possibly hearing my thoughts on, or even just a how to play on. And I keep a list because I'm a gamer and I play a lot of those games. I love tabletop. I love gaming in all of its forms. And so I have this giant master list of things that I might check out. And Flesh and Blood was very close to the top of that list. But what really started to interest me in Flesh and Blood, and why I checked it out ahead of other things on that list, was that I became aware that they're very invested in the local game store, and hopefully when we get out of this pandemic, 6 feet apart, by the way, 6 feet apart, that when we get out of this pandemic, and also they're based out of New Zealand where they are largely out of this pandemic, that they have a great interest in the in-person tournament scene, the local game store scene, and that really piqued my interest because that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. So I began to look into them because of both audience interest in the game and also that philosophy of the game. And then when I looked into the game, I immediately got hooked because I'm one of those video game players who, if you've got a game like, I don't know, insert generic video game here, where you start equipping all kinds of cool stuff onto your main character that you're about to go out into the world and blow things up or zap them with lightning bolts. I love that sort of aspect of what armor do I wear? What am I going to have, a magic staff or a sword or a two-handed sword? And the fact that that's such an integral part of Flesh and Blood, that character customization and choice, that got me hooked before I even fully knew how to play the game. That was the thing where I was like, oh, that's so cool. And from there, it was just a matter of picking up some decks, picking up some cards, playing games with my wife and with friends, and getting hooked. And if I'm hooked and I'm loving it, that's what leads to content, typically. And so I went about it from there.
Awesome. I mean, personally, for myself, the same is true for me. I love, the equipment aspect, almost like the Diablo-y style aspect where you equip, your weapons and your armor, and you feel like you're invested in your character too, right from the start, because you already have a say in how you start, rather than just be like, you shuffle up and you're good to go. But you do still have that aspect as well, so.
Yeah, and as someone who's very addicted to that sort of stuff, as somebody who plays Skyrim for the outfits.
Oh, yeah.
Not to go kill monsters. I play Skyrim to dress up my character in really cool armor and be like, ooh, that one makes my sneak better. Am I sneaking around? No, I'm just dressing him up. But yeah, that is definitely what was the first little spark that ignited my interest after I was just, I look into a lot of games and I've got a long list, and there's a lot of cool stuff out there, and there's only so much time and hours in the day. And that was the thing that really started me in my excitement for Flesh and Blood.
Awesome. All right, so after playing the game a bit, has your initial opinion changed at all? Or is it kind of the same? Or what do you think of it after playing the game for a little bit?
I feel that the game is definitely high on the, I don't know if I'd say complexity scale, but there's a lot of things you have to keep track of. It reminds me in many ways of, again, I'm going to equate things to Magic the Gathering. I apologize. That is the center of my universe. When I play Ticket to Ride, I'm like, oh, that's like Opt, isn't it? Yeah. When you draw a certain card or whatever. I equate things to Magic the Gathering.
I think a lot of folks watching this will probably equate them as well,
Yeah. It's a good game for a reason, but I feel that Flesh and Blood starts at that point in a Magic game that you might get to where you have 10 different things on the field, and your opponent has 10 different things on the field, and you're like, okay, if I do this, my this triggers, this can do this, but they can sack this, and there's a lot to think about, and that's not necessarily complex, but it does occupy a lot of brain space. That was actually one of the things that was close to putting me off from the game, is that I pull out my red deck in Magic a lot because I just want to sometimes go bolt to the face. And so I was a little like, ooh, that is a lot to keep track of. But once you get comfortable with the cards, once you start learning the cards, you get comfortable with the game, it isn't as big a stress. And so you put in the hours, you go through a few play games, and it becomes a lot easier to navigate. That's obviously true of a lot of games. I find it to be, and I said this in my Learn How to Play video, a game that is really going to scratch that itch for gamers who love that complex game state. And so maybe it isn't going to be my kid loves it. My kid's 7.5, and he's like 90% there on getting the rules right, which is about the same with Pokemon and Magic. So, no problem there. But I do think that you're going to have a large audience of people who are gamers who like to scratch that itch of a very complex or busy game state. Lot to think about, lot of possibilities, a lot of combinations, 20,000 things that could happen when you make a move. It's not as simple as, all right, I lightning bolt you for 3 and I pass the turn. There's a lot that can go on. And that's great to have that in there. I don't shy away from that stuff, even if I personally might want to relax with red deck wins. I think it's great to have those games in the game space just as much as it's great to have a casual, quickie sort of game. That sort of diversity of gameplay is great for people to find what interests them.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think one of the core philosophies, or one of the core sayings they had when the game first came out, was that it was like by gamers for gamers.
Yeah.
And I think that holds a lot of truth here. And even if you're playing like a very aggressive, kind of like a red deck style in Flesh and Blood, even then you still have to make a lot of decisions, right?
Right.
You have to determine like which cards you want to pitch, what cards you want to save for your turn, because in Flesh and Blood you draw up at the end of your turn rather than the beginning of your turn, so you need to plan your turn kind of ahead of time while your opponent's playing. Which I think is great. It gives you interaction on your opponent's turn, so you can't just like zone out and be like, it's your turn, I'm gonna zonk out, and maybe unless I have like a counter spell or something like that.
Yeah. I think a lot of Magic players in particular that were a big fan of the tournament scene, were a big fan of those think deep moments in a highly competitive, high stress Magic environment, and they really love that moment, they're really going to like Flesh and Blood. And since Magic does seem to be moving away from that, it's great that Flesh and Blood is interested in picking up what Magic has left on the table in that regard. And I apologize. The first thing he said to me is we're not here to talk about Magic. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. Let's talk Flesh and Blood. And I keep bringing it back to Magic. I will stop doing that now. Forget Magic the Gathering. And that's another, to say one more thing on Magic the Gathering, after I said forget it. It isn't a Magic clone. It is its own thing.
Oh, yeah.
It is not just, it's they took Magic Commander and reskinned it. It's nothing like that at all. I'm really impressed that I feel that it's its own game system and its own unique feel when I'm playing. Like I said, I do play a lot of TCGs, and it's very obvious with especially new ones where they're like, cool, let's do Magic the Gathering, only it's our name on it. And it's not that at all. It really is a unique system, and I enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the first things that drew me to it as well. Just like the system is so unique, and it's just so much fun. It brings so much new stuff to the table, which is just fantastic.
Yeah.
So I know we said we're not going to talk a lot about Magic, but as a longtime Magic the Gathering player, what do you feel is Flesh and Blood's greatest strength that it has right now?
Over Magic the Gathering specifically?
Just in general, as your opinion as a Magic player, as maybe just a card game player in general.
If I were to go away from a gameplay answer, because I'm not I mean, people who watch my channel know that while I do lessons, they're more introductory, and I am not that heavy tournament grinder type. So you could ask one of them about like deep gameplay things. I was speaking to a particularly large creator that's a fan of Flesh and Blood. I won't drop names, but he's one of those, real dissect the game types. And he said to me something that I don't have in my skill set, which is, he said, the game has balance like none other in terms of different card types, mechanics. You're not going to get outclassed and that he really liked the way the system does that. And I'm like, great, that sounds good. For me, I really do enjoy that return to the game store environment, and I do really enjoy the return to things like again, the flavor and feel of the cards. The first thing I said to you was my interest in getting the types of cards where we have both the adult and young version of the same hero on either side, because I said, isn't that cool that I can flip that? Now, that's not gameplay mechanics at all. You can easily just have your young hero, your old hero on separate cards, but I'm like, no, I want to customize my thing. I want to get my armor in these ways, and those are the things that excite me. It's like, it's the equivalent of in Magic, choosing the type of basic lands that you have in your commander deck and choosing that artwork. And Flesh and Blood really does have a lot in there for collectors as well, or people who like to personalize and stylize, and you can ignore it entirely if you want. And a lot of the issues with pricing, I think, comes from if you're obsessed with getting those really good ones, yeah, there can be pricing there, but there's cheap versions available and non-special versions available. So I think that that's a really great aspect. I'm sick of digital games. I'm sick of digital space. I just really am. I can't play Magic Arena. I can't play Hearthstone. I've lost interest in largely. I mean, I still like Runeterra, but I just don't like digital games that much. And I enjoy the physicality of a game like Flesh and Blood, all of those little aspects, showing off my deck to you, the emphasis on the local game store. I think that that's something Magic has forgotten, and that players who miss that will find that in Flesh and Blood as well.
I agree like 1,000,000%, especially about like the physical card game
Yeah.
thing. Sometimes I feel like I'm an old man and I'm just like, I want to play with the physical cards. I don't want to play your fancy Hearthstones or your Runeterras, even though they're great games.
They are.
I just like having the physicality of it. I mean, like that with like books too. I'd rather have like the physical book rather than like an ebook, though there's a lot of advantages to being portable.
Sure.
But yeah, I agree so much. And there's something to be said about like local game stores being like the third space. So there's like this common, classic, I guess you can say like sentiment that there's a third space, right? So the first space would be your home. The second space would be your work. But it's great to have a third space. So a lot of folks, that would be like a pub or a club or something like that. But for a lot of us like gamers, especially like tabletop gamers, the third space is your local game store. And it's fantastic to have a third space like that. And it's fantastic that Flesh and Blood is promoting that and not just being like, hey, here's some digital stuff.
Well, they recognize that the first thing anyone is going to say after, can I afford this, is, I don't have anyone to play this with. And that's why the local game store is so important. And I think they have a really good model and philosophy in saying, look, if we make this game a good deal for the local game store, that incentivizes the local game store to encourage tournaments, to encourage teaching people how to play. I believe that's a vital part of things, and I think that's great community. Some of my best friends are people I've met at my local game store. I know people who met the person they ended up marrying at their local game store. People have met friends for life through all of that, and it's the space where we come in to play that matters. Again, I'm not just saying I like Flesh and Blood because of this. It's a great game, but I must admit that philosophy being tied into the game does help, and it does help incentivize me as well.
Yeah. All right, so we just talked about like what you felt that Flesh and Blood's greatest strength was. Well, what do you think is its greatest weakness or challenge that it has? Because, you know, everything has strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, what do you feel like?
Well, you're going to be getting a preview. I know my first video was just how to play the game, and then I'm going to be doing an Is It Worth It to Buy on the Blitz decks, and then I'm going to talk about a little bit of what I see critically wrong in the game. So I'm going to give a bit of a preview there. I mentioned this to you the other day, and again, this is a disclaimer for those who don't know me. We're now getting into opinion that is subjective. So I'm giving you my subjective opinion on what's wrong or what its biggest hurdle is. And this is what I'm going to say. I think that they have to overcome, and they have a little bit in each new set. I've seen them working on it, but I think they've got a major problem in making their symbols and typeface more clear, more readily visible, as well as some issues relating to their art in terms of making sure that individual cards have artwork that distinguishes that card from other cards. In other words, you don't want 3 cards that are different cards, but it all kind of like when I'm looking at my opponent's board state and just looking at the art, it looks like the same card. The reason is that it is hard sometimes to see the symbols for on a card where I'm looking at the card's, mechanics, and it's like, spend this to gain attack or whatever. In Magic, for example, that red mana symbol, wherever it is on the card, pops. I can see it. There's a mana cost, spend 1 red to get this. There's no mistaking it. My eyes are drawn to it like a moth to a flame, and I feel Flesh and Blood has a bit of a struggle there. Now, there's a lot of information on the card. That was actually something you pointed out to me when we were chatting about this, and that's true. There's also Magic cards with a lot of information on them. I still feel that examining the design, even part of the big thing about the mana symbols in Magic is they put a lot of effort into the design, making sure that the design is one where from across the room it's going to catch your eye. Same thing with the artwork. A lot of the artwork, and this isn't to say that the artwork isn't talented, but in a lot of it I feel it does start to blend together. Not all pieces, obviously, but I want to make sure when a card comes down it's almost like glowing off of the table. In some pieces it does, but I do feel that they need to, whoever is working on art direction, needs to say, look, we want to make sure that this pops. That's the best way I can non-technically describe it. We want it to pop and be distinct from the other pieces. Tough thing to do when you got thousands of different artworks, thousands of different cards, but it needs to be done. I need to be able to glance at your table and just by the artwork's such a good indicator, be like, all right, that's this spell, that's this spell, sorry, that's this card, that's this card. And also on my own cards to look at it, I shouldn't be struggling to be like, oh, that's an attack symbol, that's this symbol, that's the resource symbol. Off of the top of my head right now, I could draw for you. Obviously, I've been playing Magic forever, but in the same way, I could be like, this is the red mana symbol. How would you describe and paint the resource symbol or the attack symbol? Are they distinct? Are they memorable? Are they something that people would turn into jewelry? People turn the symbols of Magic into jewelry and icons, and that's what they need to be more of. And I feel that is an area that they tripped on. And it was the first comment as my wife and I sat down to really grind our teeth into the game in the early days, is I went, oh, these symbols. Ugh, they're rough. They're rough. They're not bad, but they just blend right in, and they need to be more distinct, in my opinion.
That's like totally fair. That's totally fair. I agree 100% with you about like cards need to be recognizable. So when you're playing against someone, when they play a card, you need to be able to know what that card is.
Right.
Especially if you're playing, and we talked about this earlier. Flesh and Blood focuses more on physical play. So if they're playing it in front of you, just being able to know what that is without having to be like, hey, what does your card do? Let me read it. It is very important.
Right.
Especially when you start to get into like organized play and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. I know Flesh and Blood has taken this kind of feedback into account before with the rarity symbols. Mm-hmm. So the rarity symbols, if you don't know, used to not have the color-coded system that it currently does. That used to just be a little tiny like M for majestic, and now there's like a big red M. So yeah. I would not be surprised if they take a lot of this feedback to heart, because I know that they're listening. Not maybe to this specific video, but I know that they're listening in general.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if...
It's not an easy thing to do, but I'd actually like piggyback on there's a big difference between, oh, what does your card do? That's fair. Hey, you play a card, I've never seen it before, or I don't remember it, and I say, hey, what does your card do? And I need to look at and refresh myself. That's fine, but what you want to avoid is, which card is that?
Yeah.
And especially tournament play. Now, if you're playing hyper competitive, you're here down in New Zealand where we've got the competitions, you know all the cards. But are you really just from a glance, are you going to say, I know that card from a glance, or are you going to say, wait, which card is that? Oh, right. That's what you want to be careful of. And especially since this is a game that's direction is they want to build that as a path that people take, then you need to make sure that symbols, iconography, typeface, that it's as clear as can be, and finding ways around that. And that's not an easy solution. That's why people get the big bucks, but that is something I see as something they should prioritize for as the game develops. And we saw that in Magic too. You know, the symbols evolved over time, the border and frame evolved over time. I'm sure we'll see that in Flesh and Blood as well.
Yeah, I mean, like the white mana symbol, right? Used to be like a little tiny, like sunburst looking thing. I remember that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's totally fair. So, what are your thoughts on gameplay overall so far? Like the resource system, the pitch mechanic, the hero-to-hero combat. What are your just general thoughts?
I think it's brilliant. We mentioned earlier that it's its own thing. The not having mana screw or resource screw is really good. So the fact that you never want dead cards in your hand. And this is one thing that a lot of games take into account because of Magic the Gathering, because Magic is the famous game of dead cards in hand and mana screw. And I would argue in Magic, we should keep that just because that's what Magic is. But as other games come along, they seek to perfect that. So the fact that pretty much, you're always going to be able to pitch a card if you need a resource. Not always, but often. It keeps that card from being dead. Most cards have a defense capability, some exceptions obviously, but we can then use it. Oh no, they're coming at me. Okay, I'm going to use this to defend if I want. And so a singular card has multiple uses and functions in those ways. Keeps you from just being like, well, grip full of cards and nothing to do. That is not impossible to happen, but unlikely. And I think that that's great design. I really like the hero versus hero aspect. And when I saw mentors, which my preview card, was a mentor, and I was like, oh no, we're getting into, and this is what I hope they don't get into, lots of different characters on the board. I don't want to see that happen, because I think that's also what makes Flesh and Blood unique, which is that in Magic, one of the most popular formats is Commander, and your Commander is just one person out of a whole cast of characters. You could play a game of Commander and never bring your Commander into play. You have all these different creatures on the board. You have creatures in your deck that are more powerful and more scary than your Commander sometimes. And I really like that this is as if I took my Commander and I said, it's just going to be my Commander going into battle. They're going to equip themselves up with their artifacts that they like, put on that helm, put on that magic breastplate, and then go into battle. And it's just them. And I really like that individualistic connection that I have to the hero. Obviously, I'm really hooked on the heroes themselves. Another criticism I have is just this is now out of excitement, but I want more. I want there to be 1,000 ones to choose from. There's not enough. For first thing I said there's not enough. I want 20 different illusionists to pick from. I don't just want one illusionist or two illusionists or 5 illusionists. I say that's not enough illusionists. I want a whole cast of characters so that we can each get in there. And these are things that really work in addition to gameplay mechanics, which is when you get enfranchised players that are passionately attached to color identity, in this case class identity. Like I'm really attached to illusionist, or I'm really attached to this specific hero and their story and their cards, and then we get cards that are connected to them. This is her weapon, this is his staff. Ooh, like that sort of stuff's great. That sort of stuff is something I do feel Flesh and Blood has going on, but it's also in its infancy. This is a young game, and so I recognize you got to give it a few years. You can't get 100 heroes in one set. That'd be overkill. So we're watching it like a flower bloom, and that's exciting as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're still super early with Flesh and Blood. And I can imagine, like, supplementary sets. So, like, the last supplementary set was Crucible of War, and they introduced a bunch of new young heroes, specifically. And that was the most number of heroes we've ever had introduced in the game at once.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see them doing that in the future. Just adding more heroes and support for existing heroes in, like, these supplementary sets.
Yeah.
These sets that are designed to not be drafted, unlike the main sets.
Yeah. Do you think that the emphasis on Blitz and the young hero is going to turn into kind of like, if it hasn't already, this is really the premier way to do Flesh and Blood, and that the more classic constructed format is going to be the hardcore core mode that people will shy away from, or I'm not as in tune to the community as you are in that regard, but I'm just like, I'm seeing that in it's a lot easier to play the Blitz games and a lot faster, which also is good for people in our busy lives. And I'm wondering if that's really going to be like Blitz is the center, if it's not already, of the game. And then other formats like multiplayer and Classic Constructed is more advanced.
So far, we've seen kind of like an ebb and flow with that. It was only Classic Constructed for the first 2 sets.
Yeah.
And then they introduced Blitz kind of right when Crucible of War was coming out. And a lot of focus shifted to Blitz and to like these skirmish events that they started to have.
Yeah.
And now we've seen a kind of a shift back to Classic Constructed currently. I think Blitz will always be very popular just because it is so approachable. It's so much easier to play. It's a lot quicker. You can get more games in, which is fantastic for learning. Whereas Classic Constructed is much more, I don't want to say grindy, but the matches, the games are longer. However, I think for competitive environments, Classic Constructed will be the way to go, just because of the way you build your deck and the way you choose what cards that are going to go into your deck before the match begins. Flesh and Blood doesn't really have sideboarding the same way that Magic the Gathering has sideboarding. You like have your pile of like 80 cards and you pick which ones you want before the match starts. Blitz does not have that. So you have a little bit more of a strategic counterplay when it comes to Classic Constructed. So I think Classic Constructed will always be the premier competitive format. I do think Blitz, though, I think it might be like the go-to casual or beginner format, at least for the time being, especially as we see an influx of like new players.
Yeah.
And maybe they can start with Blitz. I can see that's
a great entry point. It's a good gateway. Let's just get a Blitz game. Let's get a quick skirmish, and then you graduate, as it were, into Classic Constructed. I definitely agree with you about competitive. Like, even also as a viewer, fast games sometimes aren't the best. You like to sit down and watch that dive deep sort of grindy, gameplay. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. I mean, again, subjective opinion, but I enjoy that. I like watching the people who are far more talented and skilled than I sweat a little bit, and I get off on that when I watch a competitive match of Magic or Flesh and Blood. But I think it's just such a great way to just say, hey, and we got the Blitz decks. Here's a Blitz deck. Sit down, 15 minutes. Let's get a game. And it's a really good entry point. I could see, I don't know what New Zealand local game stores do, but I could see here when we get our restrictions lifted, those being Blitz days, where it's like, come in, maybe we can even get to a point where stores are like making their own, like not that great quality, but still playable little Blitz decks. Everybody chips in $5, so you get a little Blitz deck from the store, and sit down and have a little somebody who knows how to play teaches you how to play. It seems like a real good entry or gateway sort of format to me, anyway.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. So, how do you feel about Legend Story Studios as a company right now? We've already talked about their focus on the local game store and playing in the Flesh and Blood, but just kind of what's your initial impressions of them, just like as a company and that kind of stuff?
I as I said to you, Legend Story Studios has already treated me with more respect and kindness than Wizards of the Coast ever has. And that isn't to say Wizards of the Coast has been cruel to me or anything. I know I made the joke about not getting a preview card, and some people unfortunately didn't realize I'm joking. I mean, I didn't get the preview card, but I don't care. And I was just like, I thought it would be funny too, because I sometimes like to present myself as a blustery character. It's like, it makes me laugh, and I like to make other people laugh. But I don't really care about that. But the way in which, without giving away just personal interaction details, but there was that personal interaction. I got the feeling that they cared. And I've also, before anyone jumps in and says, well, they just want you to, give attention to their game. That's true for a lot of games. I've covered other games. I've had companies and the people who own companies of games I've covered in emails to me, and there's business transaction, not that I've been paid for anything like that, I haven't, but I mean the business aspect of, yes, we want the exposure of you doing a learn how to play video, and we're happy to do what we can do to make that happen. Short of, I don't take cash for that sort of thing at all. That's why I have the cheesy sponsored videos. But can we get you assets to using graphics? Can we have someone look over the script to make sure you didn't make any, errors? Things like that are helpful. But just the way that the people that I've interacted with at LSS spoke to me and wrote me was very respectful and personal, and it was about more than just traction with my audience. It was about a belief in what they were doing and a belief in what I'm doing, which is also something that I don't often have. People might be very happy because of my subscriber count or my monthly view numbers, but there was a lot of a personal respect that I found. I actually wrote a little note to my contact and said, I just really want to say I appreciate being treated this way for what is a stressful interaction for all people involved. I mean, it's also stressful because it's their business and their thing on the line. And for all you know, I'm going to come out there and say, this game is a scam, and I denounce it. And didn't do that for the Flesh and Blood because I don't believe that. But I have had games that reached out to me, and I was like, geez, I did a video about this is Rip-Off City. So I get it. It's a high tension thing, but I think that the company is homegrown, and I think that the company is trying to capture a space in gaming that oftentimes is lost to hyper-corporatization and marketing, which are important things. It is important for Legend Story Studios to be aware of marketing. It is important for them to be aware of the business aspect of things. But it is important for them to have a heart and soul, and I believe they do. I really do believe that. I would say their biggest obstacle to overcome is that heart and soul, because what they can't do is trip up and do amateur hour. And so they're going to be tested, as all companies are tested, all products are tested, all YouTubers are tested. Each of us will be tested. and they can't end up with, wow, what amateur hour over there that they did not recognize that this was a thing that you just have to, do in business to succeed, and they just were so wrapped up in the game and the artwork and the this and the interactions, and that's all beautiful stuff, but they need to hopefully also have a shrewdness about them as well to make those tough calls. And again, that's why they're going to get paid the big bucks, because if they navigate those waters correctly, it's a success on all fronts. You got to keep your soul, but also keep a shrewd mind about it as well. And that's my biggest concern. Other issues I was chatting with you about, where I said, oh, I hope they don't fall into this little pitfall of real easy to be a kind of, heart-based company and make a mistake like that. We shall see. But I have a lot of confidence in them and a lot of affection for them as well. And I think that's bankable. You can take that to the bank when you get that from your player base. Like, Magic's player base doesn't trust Wizards of the Coast at all. And I don't think Wizards of the Coast cares, and I think that's a critical mistake. And I think that, people might have issue with LSS. So, you're always going to have issue. You're always going to have critique. But I think that if there's trust that the company has the game's best interest at heart, that goes a long way. And I think Wizards of the Coast has lost that trust. And I think they don't care that trust doesn't make them money. And maybe it doesn't, but I think LSS has that. That's my belief anyway. That's, again, completely subjective.
Yeah, I mean, I think just being nice to your fans and to people who are passionate about your game just goes a long way, regardless of how much personally, how much, if they send me a preview card or whatever. I think just being nice on a human level goes a long way, and it's not something a ton of companies do. And maybe the big companies, they can afford to not do that.
That's fair. But, I mean, listen, there was a day like you're at today where I could read and respond to every single message that got sent my way.
And I do.
Yep. And then it got to, well, I read all of them, but I can only answer a couple of them. And then it got to, I read most of them and I answer none of them because if I answer some of them, it'll just be I can't answer anything anymore. I'm sorry. I read what I can. I really do read what I can, but I can barely answer. And that's a natural progression. You're going to hit that day where suddenly you're going to, because I see your trajectory, you're going to get there and you're going to hit that day where you go, whew, all right, let me just read everything and I'll answer what I can. I get that. I get that companies reach that point where they're like, listen, everyone has got a beef with us about something. We can't make everybody happy. I totally get that's part of business, but it's about that balance. You got to keep your soul and also be shrewd. You got to grow your channel and also grow your community. And those can sometimes be things at odds with one another that you must balance. I think the balance scales got tipped with some companies. And they can go back. A really great example of that is Games Workshop. Oh. There was a time where Games Workshop was as toxic as Wizards of the Coast is in terms of how their fans felt towards them.
Oh, for sure.
And now I don't really consume their products, but a lot of my friends do. And I know they're not perfect, but they've made great strides from where they used to be. I know that much from chatting with my friends who play Warhammer. And I know that they have a ways to go, but boy, were they at the rock bottom at one point, and they've come a long way, baby. So there's hope for WotC yet.
Yep, I got hope. I don't know how much hope, but I got hope. So I know you're still new to the game, but what class or hero or character kind of speaks to you the most so far? Like, what's your initial favorite hero or class?
I would say, so I have two cop-out answers on this. I would say that I'm going to be a big fan. I already mentioned it in my examples. You always know what I'm thinking of because I have the type of brain that when I just need random example, it's not random, it's whatever is on my mind. So from the previous class examples, I said illusionist like 15 times. Now, I'm prejudiced on the new illusionist class because my preview card is so freaking cool, the librarian, and the librarian needs to be in a young illusionist's deck. And so obviously I'm as soon as Monarch hits, I'm going to go nuts on that. And maybe I'm going to find that the gameplay is not to my liking. But yeah, Illusionist is really cool. I tend to be much as a red player might more towards Brute and Warrior and just more aggressive builds. But the character and flavor of those don't speak to me. Oftentimes, I am more interested in magic, sorcery, arcane uses, sort of things, which Illusionist absolutely fits into. Though in gameplay, especially when you look at those related classes in Flesh and Blood, that's a little bit more grindy control. Again, you can build differently and such, but that is a little less of my interest at this time. I'm excited to see how Illusionist plays out. And I'm very excited to land my preview card in my arsenal, and I like that ability. But it is striking me because I haven't played with it yet because it's not out. I haven't, or have I? Because I might have some samples. But it might be a little more grindy than I like. I do like drawing cards. Putting up those shields is indicative of let's draw this out, which I'm a little less fan of. I'm a little bit more of a let's go in full force, full punch, but I don't like the flavor of that kind of brute attack sort of thing. So I'm always looking for that balance, the red-blue balance.
Yeah, I think Illusionist kind of hits both of them.
A lot of that's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping.
A lot of the cards we've seen so far are actually quite strong. 2-cost, 8-attack cards. You still have that power to resource ratio that a lot of those
through. I like that.
I think Prism and Illusionist are going to be fan favorites. I think that it's fantastic. Beautiful artwork across the board, and I think the cards are just really good.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be really good. I think Illusionist lends itself to a lot of counterplay with the Phantasm mechanic, but I think it's sweet. I
haven't gotten to play around with. I really liked Dash and Mechanist builds. That's kind of. That was another space that occupied two areas for me of both the flavor. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an inventor, so I'm really that's cool. That I always like that in games, and I really think they captured the flavor of that really well in Flesh and Blood. I haven't really. That was one I didn't test with a lot or play with a lot, so that's on my to-do list.
Yeah, Dash you can build a couple different ways. There's a heavy control grindy deck that is very good in tournament winning, but you could also build it like a boost theme, where it's a very aggro, go wide style deck.
Those are usually my favorite is if it's more like that. So we'll see. Yeah, I'm excited for Illusionist.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about cold foils. What is your opinion of them in general? Do you like them? Do you think they're good for the game? Do you think they're good for collectors? What's your opinion of cold foils in general?
So when I was first getting into the game, I equated it to, and this is going to surprise you, Magic the Gathering. And I thought of the fact that originally in Magic the Gathering, in the ancient era called the 90s, their idea was that the first time they printed a card, it would be in black border. And then when they reprinted a card, it would be in white border. And that fell out of favor because people hated the white border cards so much, and that continued up until today, where now they're starting to get a little like it's just so rare and different, but it's still thought of as aesthetically displeasing. Now that means that white border was always worth a lot less than black border, and that collectors and people pursuing financial gain would go after the black border version of cards. I actually think Magic might consider bringing that back. I think it's a good idea. I don't think they will, because they're not going to intentionally make cards that people don't want. But this idea that we're going to print out a batch of cards and it has special versions, special treatments, I believe is the lingo of it, but then we're going to go into our unlimited printing, and that is not going to have those treatments in it. But it is going to have the cards, the game pieces. They're going to be plentiful, they're going to be available, but the special ones are not there. I'm in favor of that. There's still feel-bads to that, and I get it. There's people who are going to be upset always at that, and I get that, but I think that I like that. I think I like the idea. This is another area that LSS is going to have to navigate, though, because you can't have it so that just the people with money get access to those first edition printings, where it's just like, well, great, normal people can never get access. They must find a way to even the playing field. And an example I thought of is stuff like pre-release. So you sign up for a Magic the Gathering pre-release, you go in and you get your pre-release kit, and you pick up a pre-ordered a box, you get a box. That, imagine if that was the equivalent of a first edition and it was at regular prices there, and the game store sold it. Everybody comes in, everybody wants to come in for that pre-release, everybody's going to want to get those cold foils and stuff like that, and then after that some of those financial shenanigans can go on, and then they have to probably decrease the window, I would say, between that and the unlimited print, because they need to make sure that those unlimited boxes are available for the masses fast, like, again, in the same way as pre-release and launch, maybe not a week apart, but maybe two. And they got to be on top of that. And I think that making sure that everybody has at least a weekend of equal access to come on into the game store, and you play in an event, hey, I can't get 17 pre-release kits, it's just me in here, so I'm going to play pre-release, and I can crack some first edition packs and stuff and maybe get those cards or ideas like that. And again, I'm equating it to Magic, but I like the idea. Am I wowed by the treatment personally? I think it's nice. I don't think it's that spectacular. I was actually a little surprised that it wasn't more like what we're seeing with the Mentor cards, which are the full border frameless thing. I'm surprised it didn't go a little more, full tilt in terms of really blinging it out.
It's a very subtle foiling.
Yeah. It's nice. It's classy.
Yeah, exactly.
I like, despite how I dress with these bright, like visual, like headache of colors style, I do like that kind of subtle classiness to it. I am surprised that there isn't a little bit more. And I would say that what I'd love to see invested in that is that idea of it's the same cards in Unlimited and the first print run, just that the first print run has the special treatments. There's still special things in Unlimited, but the really special things are in the first print run, and then we got to focus on even playing ground when it first hits shelves. Sure, you can have your person who has got their truckload cart that they put this money into, that's fine. But we just got to make sure that if somebody shows up to their shop and they pre-ordered and they played a game, that they've got access at a reasonable price that weekend. And then after that, it's all bets are off. You got to let that reasonable access hit. Everybody's got access to, I want to play a game with my kid, and ooh, look, I got a cold foil in my kit. I got 2 gold, right? Fine. Then let the financiers go nuts, and then the next weekend we got Unlimited out, and everybody's got even playing field, and anybody whining about I can't afford to play the game because it's so expensive, it's like, it's on the shelf, it's $80 on the shelf right here, it's $80 on the shelf. Oh, well, it doesn't have the cold foil. Well, then is it really that you're upset you can't play the game, or you're upset that you can't get the special treatment? You know, and if anything, maybe the fact that the cold foils aren't that different it's like, really? It's just a subtle foiling. It's not like it's this, like full tilt sort of thing. Is it that bad? Everybody's enjoying it. It creates, I think, having the right level of tantalizing pursuit of the special cards is good as well. I like it. I think, again, this is where we got to watch out. Don't do amateur hour and don't sell your soul. Hit that balance. You can get there.
There's a little bit of a hot take, but I think some of the cold foils look a little bit better as rainbow foils in the unlimited. Not all of them, but some of them do. The rainbow foiling just makes it look real nice.
Yeah.
And I love, like you said, love that the same cards are in unlimited. You can crack an unlimited box and pull like a nice fabled, and those cards aren't worthless. They're still like very valuable. Not as valuable as a cold foil, but they're still very valuable.
Absolutely.
And they're plentiful, at least for the time being. You can just go and buy it for $80 and box for $80 and you're good to go. I think the Monarch pre-release that's coming up, it's going to date the timing of this video, but the Monarch pre-release that's coming up is going to be a very interesting indicator of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Because personally, I'll be going to the pre-release at a local game store here. They're doing 6 packs for $30 in their first edition, which is a pretty good price.
That's what we need to see. And what we got to be careful of is the point where the local game store is just going to feel, I can't sell you first edition packs 6 for $30. They're worth $100 each.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I get that. That's not on the local game store. If you're literally going to send them a box of $100 bills and say you need to sell these for $600 bills for $30, and the game store is like living hand to mouth, as most of these game dens are, that then I feel, and again, there are people who feel differently than me, but that I feel is on the company, needs to ensure that we get that opening equal access. And then after that, go nuts. Just got to give us that. And to any of the financiers watching this who are buying the pallets and pallets of first edition through your connections, you got to remember, you got to let people have that first weekend within reason. You got to, because that's also the kid going into the game store who's 12 years old and getting those 6 first edition packs for $30 turns into your customers of tomorrow. And so you can't starve the beast. You got to recognize that. Don't buy out the blitz decks. They're not for you. They're for those kids to start in the game, and then you get your economy flowing. You need to let that exist. And some of that's on the company, some of that, it's mostly on the company. I don't tend to blame, I've had my moments, but I don't tend to blame MTG Finance too much. I've had my moments. I'm not going to say I've been an angel, but I largely feel it's on the management of the supply towards demand, the relationship with the local game stores, the relationship with the community, and in ensuring those things. But we all got to recognize when we're going too far, and we got to recognize the importance in letting that, I feel, equal playground at the start happen.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. Especially like with the blitz decks, man.
Oh yeah, with the blitz decks, please don't buy them out.
They need to be printed so much that they're basically worthless.
That's what we need.
Yeah. Exactly.
They're worth $10. You're getting $10 worth of cards in a $10 pre-release blitz deck. That's perfect. So it's like, I'm not just getting $1 worth of cards here, but I get it. I got $10 worth of cards in here, and I can sit down and play. And that's what we want, is we want people to be able to spend $10 and sit down and play the game, and then we can take it from there. Then you can go crazy, but we must have that entry point so that we can play the game. And after that, go nuts till your heart's content. But if you stop people, if you go, here's the $10 entry point, oops, it's $70 because we bought them all and now we're selling them for $70. Yeah. That's what we got to watch out for. And some of that's on the company, some of that's on the community, some of that's just up to nobody. It's just how things happen sometimes.
Yeah. So, what type, and once again, we're going to talk a little bit about Magic here, not a lot, but a little bit. What type of Magic the Gathering players do you think Flesh and Blood appeals to, if any?
Blue players.
Blue players, yeah.
Yeah, no, it does. Hardcore players. It appeals to, like I said, I think that there were some comments on my How to Play of like, wow, that's a lot going on, or variations on that sentiment. And my answer is, yeah, it's going to appeal to the people who like that, who like big thinky moments. There's a video game that is famous for being like, you're not going to just be able to sit down, turn this on, and know it. You've got to really dig into it to figure out the system. And some people are like, that's crazy. I've been trying for a week to figure this video game out. You're telling me it's the best ever, and I'm just like, my fingertips are bleeding trying to figure out how to cast the spell and make it work. And there are people who are like, that's what you have to get off on and enjoy. And if you don't, that's fair, but that means the game is not going to be appealing to that itch. And I think that's who it's going to be. There's a lot of Magic players like that, and Magic has now done a big shift towards really trying to capture the casual player. Hey, let's just sit down and have fun. That's great. Nothing wrong with that. Again, it's about like, is chocolate or vanilla the better flavor? It's like different strokes for different folks. But I do feel that the players that like more stress, more intensity, more think deep moments are the ones who are going to really find Flesh and Blood appealing. Not to say that people who just want to sit down and jam some games and have fun won't, because again, the same people who get really into Commander customizing their deck, I could see them getting really into Flesh and Blood customizing their deck. Go deep in that type of stuff there too. I said that's actually what sparked my interest, because I'm actually more of one of those players. I'm not a go deep player. I'm really not. I'm a casual in terms of how I play my games. I play Merfolk, for God's sake. I'm not playing to win. So I do like that flavor aspect. I think Flesh and Blood has it both, but I think that it is going to appeal to someone who wants that intense tournament scene more. And that really, they might go, wow, this is what I want in a game. And I've seen that in the creators who have been starting to get into it. You look at a guy like Noxious, and go sub and subscribe and stuff, good guy, but like, he's absolutely going to be into those aspects of the game. And I think that if you're like that, and that's what you look for in a game, you're really going to enjoy Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, I agree. Every time they show, like, for me personally, every time they show like a brand new mechanic or class like Illusionist, I'm just like, oh, this is so much stuff I can like dig my teeth into and just kind of really get into it.
Yeah.
And once you get a good grasp of it, it's like, it feels very rewarding. Like you said, overcoming like a very challenging video game or something like that. There's like it just feels rewarding from like a gameplay kind of aspect like that. I really like it. And I do think you're right. It can appeal to like a more casual audience too, but it is definitely more going to appeal more to, the more hardcore mechanics focused players. Okay, last question here.
All right.
Where do you see Flesh and Blood going in the next 1 to 2 years out? Or maybe if you don't have a good prediction of it, where would you like to see Flesh and Blood be in the next 1 to 2 years?
I think that where it needs to go is what we've already discussed, is that we need to hit that sweet spot of the gateway products and even playing ground for new product releases. That needs to be something that they literally, if they don't have someone on staff that is their, like, this is your issue. We've got people that are so passionate about this game, they're buying out our products and then no one can get them. Well, how do we do this? Do we just print it into the ground? Do we do other things? Get a game plan. We gotta have it so that, and it's such a tightrope to walk. Magic used to have to walk this tightrope like crazy. Is we need to have it so that the Blitz decks are good. There's something you want, but not something that gets sold out. There's something that everybody wants to pick one up. Established players are still like, yeah, cool, I'll pick up a couple Blitz decks, but not, wow, that's a great deal. I'm going to pick up a truckload of them, and now nobody can get them. When you've hit that level, it's too much. They need to be on shelves so that there must be an answer. In many ways, I did my video as an answer so that no longer could anyone have the problem of they go, hey, I love Flesh and Blood, and your friend goes, nobody even knows how to play that game. It's just financiers. Does anyone play it? And you go, here you go. 15 minutes, you've got the game down. At least the basics of it, okay? So what we need is an answer to the question, oh, I can't even get the game, it's $100 just to get a pack, whatever. We need to stop. Blitz deck's $10, it's on the shelf. Pick your character. Who do you like? You like this character, you like this character. They're all good. You don't worry about what's inside. Look for one that you feel an attachment to, that excites you. Pick it up, we'll jam some games. That is the equation that must be solved. They are not in danger, but they must have that solved in a year. They can't still be having this, well, we're still having print run, we're still having distribution, we still haven't hit that in a year. That'll be problematic for them. And if a year from today we come back, we're doing this, and it's like, yeah, you go down to your local game store, they've got some Blitz decks on the shelves, they've got some unlimited boosters up there, for the sets. You want to buy unlimited, it's $4 to $5 a pack, no problem. And the Blitz decks are $10, $11, whatever. And then everything else go crazy. That's the line in the sand. And then past that point, all the madness of finance they go to town, get drunk and go to town. That's great. Must have that. And that's what I feel. Along those lines, like we've also talked about, I do think that diversifying the number of characters within a class is important. We don't want it, like I said, I'm excited about Illusionist, but maybe I don't like Prism. So what about that? What do you say to me when I go, hey, I love the idea of Illusionist, but, Prism, she's cool, but I really wish there were some other choices. I wish there were 4 Illusionist characters, young and old. I wish there were 7 ninjas, things like that. Again, you can't do that all in one set, but after another year, I'm hoping that we've got choices of, well, I'm playing with different types of Illusionists, I have choices, and I have a lot of choices. You don't want it so that if I go, oh, I love Illusionist and you love Illusionist, well, we both have the same deck. That's no fun. Or almost the same deck.
I think that's very important. Yeah, I mean, like, we're still very early with Flesh and Blood, but that's super important because Flesh and Blood doesn't rotate, and just having, like, a large cast of characters to choose from, like you said, is super important because you can, like, customize your deck to your playstyle, the characters that you like, and just being able to have like a pool of like 5, 6, 7 different heroes you can choose from is going to be really important. Not just from gameplay perspective, but like for like a personalization perspective.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And so that's something that I think they also need to work on, and that's what I'd like to see. I want to see a year from today where I'm like, yeah, if I like, you want to have a class that appeals to you, and then a selection of heroes to choose from in that class, because we have formed those attachments either to what they do or to just the flavor of the hero, or hopefully both. And we want that. And then what we want, so it's like one of those branching tree things, is, okay, cool, I've got Prism and I've got Illusionist, you've got Prism, we've got Illusionist, we've got different decks. And I'm like, well, no, you're doing the two-handed with her? No, I've got this in each hand of hers. I think that's cool. Oh, what do you got on her head? Oh, no, I got something different on her head. Oh, I've got her signature spells. Oh, no, you did this clever thing. You've got a completely different take. It's like the showing up to the game store and being like, I've got my brew. We must have that start to happen in Flesh and Blood more. Maybe not to the extent of Magic. It's still going to be, I guess we were talking at the beginning about, is it its own game? I don't know if people are familiar with like Vanguard, and like it's got some ties to that. Right. And so yeah, there is that style as well. But that's what I see. But more than anything, you gotta shut down the criticism of I can't afford to buy into the game. And the way you shut it down is you get the Blitz decks on shelves, and you got $4 unlimited packs on the shelves, and everything beyond that go crazy. But you can't stop that. And if you stop that, and you can't get a Blitz deck, and I can't get a $4 pack of unlimited, that's where we've got a problem. And that's what the next year is going to be the biggest test of, in my opinion.
I agree, like, wholeheartedly. What about like set releases? How many sets do you think they should have like a year? I personally think 3 sets is a good sweet spot.
Yeah.
That's like, a set every 4 months. It gives people enough time to sink their teeth into a set without going into wallet fatigue, having a new set every 2 months or something like that.
Sure.
Personally, I would like to see that.
Since they're taking, to put it in Magic terms, a more legacy approach than a standard approach, they don't have the idea of rotation. Yeah, I would actually say, you know what I'd say? I'd say 3 sets, and they might consider something more like a reprint heavy set to ensure in white border or equivalent that, oh God, those cards from this old set, they're getting up there, and since they're what you need to play, we need to make sure there's a supply of them. They don't fit in a Monarch, so we need to release a cheapo thing of these call them blitz packs or something, and it's where you can get, all right, we've got the heroes in there, we've got the weapons in there, and we can get those cards that way. And maybe it won't sell as big like core sets and Magic didn't for a long time, but it was necessary for those cards to be available. That's what we got to make sure. We got to make sure that there's cheapo versions of everything available, and if we can crack that problem, solve that equation, then we'll be made.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be fantastic. Fantastic for Flesh and Blood. Yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for being, here on the channel talking today about Flesh and Blood with me. It's a real honor. Once again, just thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone, today, and I want to give a special heartfelt thank you to the professor of the Tolarian Community College for coming on the channel today to talk with me about Flesh and Blood. It was a true honor, and he's such a genuinely nice person. I had an absolute blast. Just a true treat to have him here to talk about Flesh and Blood. If you haven't already for some reason, you should definitely check out his channel, Tolarian Community College. It is one of the absolute premier TCG channels out there. Tons of stuff about Magic the Gathering, but also the best product reviews for all of your, deck box, card sleeve, and binder needs. Fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough. Also, if you liked today's video, then, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. I appreciate it so much. Maybe check out my Patreon if you would like to support me directly. But regardless of what you do, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you next time for some more Flesh and Blood content. Have a good one all, and we'll see you later.